Hi everyone! The Knuckles series just dropped, and after completing it, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Like, a lot. But I feel very alone in my impressions and opinion on this show, because I'm almost exclusively seeing two different perspectives in the discourse that I want to cover about this. There's either A, many saying it's downright awful, the combination of being extremely cringe to bad acting, bad writing, and not featuring nearly enough Knuckles. But then there's side B, and those are people who liked it, weren't cringing every 5 seconds, and had an overall very positive experience from the show. Now, I also will say, there are definitely a lot less people vocally and passionately defending this compared to the amount of critics and detractors. But from my experience outside of the echo chamber that's Twitter, I've seen a complete opposite in opinions, and people overwhelmingly liked and had fun with this little miniseries, especially when you compare it to Sonic Prime, which even I, who is pretty positive about the Knuckles series overall, but in my opinion, Sonic Prime was rough. After that first season, just sitting through it was so hard. And dare I say it, but while I have a lot of critiques and things I didn't like about the Knuckles series and want to talk about,
So sweet. One day, I hope to visit this cool ranch of Doritos and bask in all of its splendor.
at the end of the day, I'd still say it's far more positives than it is negatives. So let's get into it. There's no sponsor today, so for this to not totally flop, and so I don't get evicted from my apartment, drop a like, double check you're subbed to the Raccoon Empire. I made that up, but that's the temporary new name now. And join my Discord, which is where we did a great watch party for the series. And thank you to everyone who showed up, by the way. Now, on the topic of Knuckles, there's definitely a lot of little things that could have been done better. But in that sense, it reminds me a lot of Sonic Movie 1, but in the way that I actually like the Knuckles series more. And while it has a lot of negatives,
Lil Pig, where are you?
I want to start on a more positive note when covering the series, especially because I know many of my Sonic Tuber contemporaries aren't going to be nearly as positive about this. So the first thing to note from my perspective is that with Sonic Movie 2's release and discourse, I learned that when it came to the humor and subtle jokes in that movie, I was quite alone in my enjoyment of them, even liking a lot of the bits and jokes, particularly from the wedding scene, which is a flames of disaster hot take, since we all know Sonic fans will combust if they have to go 5 minutes without cutting back to see our favorite funny, colorful creatures. Now, in terms of the humor in this show, I'd say it has a very similar style of jokes to Sonic Movie 2, if not even more quips and goose in this one, and that's not necessarily even a good thing, as I think anyone wanting a more serious tone for this series will not like at all. However, with the 3-hour runtime of this series, it's basically an Oppenheimer-length movie, and that does give enough time to both develop Knuckles and Wade as characters, plus packing the show, there being a lot more comedic characters than before when it was just Sonic, Robotnik, and maybe Rachel. But in this series, even the antagonists all have at least one decently funny moment in the show, which I think was a nice touch to making these characters feel more interesting and entertaining. They seemingly struck a really good balance of the goofy and slapstick, but also serious and even emotionally provoking whenever the director is trying to get you to feel. Which the only real emotional parts is all the stuff revolving Wade's dad abandoning him, which to be honest is pretty sad, especially because I have a lot of friends who have gone through that, and I gotta say, it's pretty messed up and pretty rough. If you're watching this and plan on growing up one day, hey, don't walk out on your kids.
Related note, did you ever find your dad?
Which is a good natural transition to talk about the two main leads of the story. Adam Pally plays Wade Whipple, who, as I've mentioned before, my only familiarity with him is his appearance on the now former Kanye podcast, Watching the Throne. And while the topic matter there at the time was pretty serious and stern in tone, I can tell from not just that, but interviews and such, that he just seems like a naturally funny and kind of goofy, witty guy, which I personally think makes him really good for this role. Wade was funny, and on paper, Wade's constant quippiness might seem annoying, especially if he was paired with Sonic. But when besides Knuckles, who is serious and quiet, this actually works out like a reverse dynamic of the first Sonic movie, where in that one, Sonic was clueless and quippy, and Tom was knowledgeable but serious. However, here they swapped out who was clueless, Wade being still knowledgeable but not very serious, and Knuckles, who is serious but has absolutely zero knowledge. In fact, both of them, they're literally just like a dumber Tom and Sonic. And with the premise of this movie taking them on a road trip together with a few occasional stops, I mean, on paper, the plot is like really similar to Sonic Movie 1's. The main difference is the buyer sends out people to go after Knuckles, while in Sonic Movie 1, Robotnik just went after Sonic himself. I guess also with the help of GUN. Now, to the other lead role in this series, Idris Elba returns as Knuckles, and I think his performance here was just as good as he was in Sonic Movie 2. There was only one single time I thought he had a questionable performance, and it was when he was struggling to hold his accent while doing chewing sounds, and in turn, lets out a bit of his natural British accent. Man, that was really bad, but I was trying to do it mid-sentence, okay? Don't get on me in the comments about how bad my British accent was, okay? I will cry.
You smashed those pins with no mercy.
Other than that, his gruff delivery fits the character insanely well. All the way to the point that whenever I hear Idris Elba's normal British voice, I would have had no faith in him as Knuckles in the movies.
I mean, but the truth is, I had auditioned for this for so long.
Also, I want to quickly mention, since this was filmed during the writers and actors strike, I'd say a good majority of the cast is British here. Even the construction workers in Green Hill, Montana have like an Irish or Scottish accent.
Did you call us up to fix your house so you could hunt us for sport?
No.
And I'm not sure how much of it was filmed during what times, as they did film a lot post-strike, but at the same time, I wonder if this is going to be the same for Sonic Movie 3. But moving on to something big. The critique I'm hearing everywhere, and this was mentioned in almost all early reviews, but everyone made it seem like Knuckles would barely be in this at all, and while I do think there could have been more of him, I wouldn't in any way say he's barely in this. In fact, I'm surprised how much actual on-screen time he had, especially for all the CG that had to go into a series like this to look so good. Even now, I see people saying,
Knuckles wasn't in it for 90%.
which I'd say between him and Wade, he probably has about half of the screen time. The only time he wasn't involved at all was episode 4, which ironically, despite that, I actually think is the best episode of the series. And even before we started the watch party, I had tweeted out that episode 4 was my favorite, and everyone in my Discord thought I was insane since it's the one that doesn't have Knuckles. But after we all saw it, ironically, it became all of their favorite episodes too, which I also think that episode focusing on Wade was super important for his character development in the series, which by the end, he's the confident warrior he set out to be initially, which that's the common theme about this show. It's even in the intro. This is about Knuckles the warrior training and creating Wade the warrior, who's basically the same character, just less of a pathetic man baby. Now, I'd be a fool if I talk about episode 4 without mentioning the rock opera, which was so interesting, weird, and frankly funny. It's also quite good sounding. It even has a performance from Michael Bolton. And when I saw this, I didn't even have to read the credits to know this was the one that was directed by Yorma from The Lonely Island. It was so apparent, and it was actually so great. But as everyone's saying they wanted more Knuckles in this series, and I'm not going to say no or turn down some extra Knuckles, I still really enjoyed the pacing, and the only thing I could see wanting as an addition was a cooling down, falling action would be a little like epilogue post the climactic ending, because a lot of people are saying the show just ends abruptly, which I do like, but at the same time, it is very abrupt. However, the high five I thought was awesome. It was perfect. High five and credits. I was like, let's go. So to wrap up the positivity section, now for critiques. I want to go into something Paramount particularly messed up about the rollout that I think really affected people's perception of this show going in. And you can't blame the fans for this, but to go into it. There's one scene that's so particularly cringy, it very well might just be the worst moment for the entire show. And that's the scene that went viral on Twitter. Wanda's dialogue makes me feel a deep pain. I feel jealous and envy of Kurt Cobain, and I want to be like him.
What the heck are you supposed to be?
Your worst nightmare.
Nice chains, bro. You look like you popped out of a 90s video game.
And even I, who's extremely tolerant of cringe, was beginning to crack and break at the seams. And this shouldn't be shocking to anyone, but Paramount might be astronomically dumb. And despite having multiple teams dedicated solely to PR and marketing, they directly chose to put out a scene featuring almost exclusively Wanda, the character whose entire gimmick is that she acts like she's 12 and a super obnoxious sister to Wade, which is a dynamic that plays on how their relationship has never matured past when they were kids just fighting as siblings. And it keeps escalating with one moment that genuinely surprised me. I'm pretty sure I gasped when watching this. And Wanda might just be the most hateable character ever. I'm seeing nothing but posts about how much people hate her, but at the same time, that's kind of the point. They try to make her so unlikable that you as the audience cannot stand seeing her. But by the end, when she is supportive of Wade and is not only rooting for him during the competition, but also goes out of her way to help him with his mom during the final battle, it's a bit of a redemption, but I feel like they could have made this more explicitly clear. And also, it seemed like they did do this redemption, but then she just becomes obnoxious in like the 5th episode again. I don't know why. So that part could have been more clear. In fact, a lot of the problems with this show, I think would have been solved if they just made a 7th episode focusing on Knuckles and resolving a lot of these plot points, because most of them are just sitting in the air. And while we're on the topic of critiques, I want to put aside all the positivity I've been building up so far, as there's one big criticism I have that I just can't move past, and that's how great everyone's acting was in this, except one person, and that was Kid Cudi, aka Scott Mescudi. Now, this isn't his first Hollywood role, and I've previously heard he was actually pretty good in a horror movie called X, but those people might have just been ultra glazing because his performance in this was so bad.
I hear the mushroom planet is beautiful this time of year, my friend. Enjoy!
And from me talking to other people about their opinions, I haven't even seen anyone disagree with me yet. In a little post-recording update, yes, I'm over 24 hours into editing, so I'm not gonna re-record the video. But while me and all my friends and creators I know thought Kid Cudi was terrible in this, I will say, I went on Twitter and they are glazing him, but I do think it's because he makes great music. I think fans of his want his acting to be good, but it is the opposite of good. I just wanted to throw that in there because I have a feeling I'm gonna have some Kid Cudi fans in the replies a little mad at me. Now, of the cast, everyone, and I do mean everyone, had me invested in who they were, and I rarely thought of them outside of the characters they're playing. But when it comes to Cudi, to make it clear, I actually like the dude's music, so I'm not trying to be a hater at all, and I genuinely do wish his performance was good as someone who likes his stuff.
This ain't good.
But at the same time, I also can't deny that I'm pretty happy he got trapped in a portal and we likely won't ever see him again. The next time I see Kid Cudi in the Sonic movie, I want him to have taken at least 5 acting classes by then.
And if you could have one celebrity join you in the Sonic universe, who would you want it to be? Who would you want to pull in there?
Oh man, Jaden.
Me? Okay, I've changed my mind. Kid Cudi's the GOAT. I don't know if Knuckles is either eligible for an Emmy or Oscar. I don't know if it's like a mini-series. Is that a show? But Cudi's gonna win the Emmy because his performance was just so good. And I'd like to apologize for everything negative I said earlier. I take it all back now. Now, one super important thing I also want to mention, as it's very relevant to the plot of the next movie, is that in the movie universe, Ivo Robotnik's grandfather, Gerald, is the one who found Sonic, and that eventually drove him crazy. And we do know in response that he also created Shadow, so presumably the arc will happen, although I can't imagine we will not be seeing the Bio-Lizard, as Chaos hasn't been introduced either, so that'd be necessary for it to make sense. However, we still don't know what the side plot of this movie is, and we can assume Shadow will become, maybe not good, but at least neutral. But we already had that with Knuckles in Sonic Movie 2, as well as Eggman being the one doing the tricking, so. Fans are currently speculating Metal Sonic will also be involved. However, I haven't seen it mentioned much before now, but it's also possible they're going to introduce Chaos in this movie, and basically combine both games' plot points into one cohesive event for Sonic Movie 3. Not saying for sure that will be the case, just something that I'd get as hard as Knuckles if I saw in the movie. And with these movies, they've been doing such a good job toting the line of being faithful to the characters in the games, while also not being corny and cheesy, which I think the show did pretty well, granted, in no way perfect. Another thing, and a pretty quick one, is that the amount of product placement in this series is insane.
Let's do this, Spotify.
Like much, but he's special.
So sweet. One day, I hope to visit this cool ranch of Doritos and bask in all of its splendor.
One finds on Facebook Marketplace.
Then I might hit Facebook Marketplace up. Might be some deals on some freaking cool stuff.
In fact, there were so many that it kind of threw me off when they made up a fake cereal brand. I was like, at this point, just get Fruity Pebbles, okay? Like, after the Spotify one, just get the bag. I don't care. Now, one critique that I'd be amiss if I didn't mention is the soundtrack. It's not actually bad at all in itself. In fact, in terms of licensed music, I think it's probably better than movie 1 or 2. But the critique that I've noticed mentioned the most, and can't help but agree with, is that outside Episode 4's musical number, there are no songs from or even relating to Sonic. Whether it's an orchestral version to even just Wade's ringtone, I feel like there should have been a bit more in terms of references past the ski resort being named Ice Cap, especially when they should know by now, as Sonic 1 was now 4 years ago, that fans overwhelmingly want some nod to the music in the movies, which normally might not seem like a big deal and easy to ignore. But with how important music is to not just Sonic as a brand, but his success too, it's kind of mind-blowing they haven't done this yet. Now, I'm no dummy, and I obviously think it'd be weird if just randomly City Escape comes on in the background, but to have something like an iconic riff or melody that fits perfectly with the scene would do so well.
What is this amazing song? Could this be? Yes! This is I Jam!
Here I come, rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. You can call me Knuckles.
Especially if it's an alternate version of a theme made just for the movie or series. But no more music talk. Let's next move on to the breakdown, or should I say my breakdown. So as a show on its own, I think it was actually fantastic. So fantastic that there were a few moments where I was really invested in the current story and characters, and I almost forgot this had any relation to Sonic until Knuckles just appears in frame and you go, yo, what the f is my buddy Knuckles doing here of all places? And I know I just called it fantastic, but that's also kind of its problem too. You see, this show is actually too good and mainstream of a series. And what I think Sonic fans particularly want is almost certainly not something general audiences would want, but rather specifically something tailor-made for them, which with a spin-off series that's not a mainstream movie seems like the perfect opportunity to give at least a little fan service. But as far as just an entertaining piece of media, I think the story was pretty good. I think the jokes and choreography behind everything was really good too. Like there was one moment where I actually chuckled. I laughed. I've never laughed at either of the Sonic movies, so that's insane.
Father, you can't leave me.
I won't, son. I never.
No!
But I will admit, I grinned when he said there's good people on both sides. I did grin a little.
I did some things, you did some things. There are good people on both sides.
Even Kid Cudi, one of his only good moments, was a scene when his mom starts calling and Wade has to unlock and open the phone for him. It was pretty funny.
I gotta take this. No. Take your time. Oh, it's my mom. Should I get that?
Yeah, you should answer it.
Yeah.
She'll be worried.
Can you Yeah, of course. Here you go. Hey, Mom!
Now, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I did like this series, but I didn't like it as much as I liked Sonic Movie 2. Sonic Movie 2 was as close to perfect as I think a video game movie will ever get. However, I will say, I like this a lot more than Sonic Movie 1. But the thing is, I think the few jokes in that first film are not only really bad, but the entire plot was so unbelievably predictable and generic to the point where even Eggman being trapped in the Mushroom Planet was revealed in the very first trailer for this movie. And let's be real, we all knew that this was going to go down the second we saw the portal rings. I mean, in the first half of the movie, he mentions Mushroom Planet like 30 times.
A nice, safe little world filled only with mushrooms. Gross, smelly mushrooms. I hate mushrooms.
Overall, I think of the 6 episodes, all 6 were actually good. Some were better than others, but I didn't think there was even one episode where I was like, oh, that one. The only one I could see that is the pacing for the 3rd episode is really slow, but I also don't want to give any critiques to that episode because I like keeping my YouTube channel. Now, obviously, the Humans Bad crowd isn't going to be able to stand the series at all, which doesn't really bother me. I'm just hoping my audience isn't going to crucify me for this, but if it happens, it happens. Now, final thoughts. I do think this could use some work to be better as an actual Sonic project, but as a piece of entertainment and content for a more general audience, I think it was actually pretty awesome, and I'm surprised they nailed it. I went in thinking I was going to despise it, but I actually turned out loving it. So who would have guessed? With that, join my Discord. It's where we did the watch party, and I want to do more like it. And I'm also going to find a solution so more people are able to watch the stream next time. Maybe we'll use Watch Together or something. But join below, drop a like. I need your likes. And go sub. I really need it. I'm so close to 200K, but I'm not there yet. Go follow my Twitter. It's where I post updates, funny pictures, memes. I'm epic, I'm based, and most importantly, I love you. Lots of love, peace, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.
BSTM rookie. Real I'm lucky. Real I'm lucky. I'm so ass, but I want to tax, so let's go and hit the hookie. Choosing my pockets, my jeans. I'm making it in my veins. Yeah.